It's a great pleasure to welcome Gour Lentell, who is the CEO of the Datafree Group. Now, if you're not familiar with Datafree, SA Tech Business Datafree has released a brand new tool that cuts out all the frustration, admin, and wasted costs from managing mobile data for remote as well as field workers. Datafree Connect lets employers make work-related tools available to employees within a data-free workspace environment on their phones so they never run out of data for work and can't misuse company data. The system gives employees a data-free workspace on their own phones where all the apps they need to work, all the apps they need for work rather, are available at all times, whether they have data on their SIM cards or not. Now, Gour, this is a fantastic solution and welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Aki. Thank you. Beautiful day here in Joburg.
It is indeed. It is indeed. And I mean, what I've just opened up with is music to the ears of many corporate organizations because, let's be honest, in the world that we're living in today, people are really struggling to keep abreast of who's using what data and how much data has been used and how do you utilize data. And it's a world where we're using data on our mobile phones all over the place. Now, how on earth did you start this organization called Datafree and where are its origins? Can you tell us about that first?
Well, it's a long story as ever, but I'll try and keep it really short. So I was born and grew up in Zimbabwe. When I was 18, I moved to the UK and lived there for a number of years. Started my IT career and then moved to Sydney, Australia, where I've lived for a long time. So I'm an IT tech guy and exclusively worked in the internet since the late 90s. So I'm an internet veteran.
Yes, I was about to say, I didn't want to label you as a veteran, but you've certainly earned your stripes. I mean, Zimbabwe, South Africa, the UK, and Australia. So you've come back to South Africa now.
I have. I've gone in a big circle, if you like, and spent a lot of time in other parts of the world. And here I am back in Southern Africa and very happy to be so. I've realized at my core, I'm African. So I've really enjoyed being back of the world the last 5 years.
Oh, listen, it's great to have you back and investing your money in the country. Now, tell us a little bit about Datafree Connect. Tell us about the company now and where did the actual idea come from?
So Datafree is the third startup myself and my co-founder have been involved in. We previously had two internet startups which were really focused on cracking the US market and mainstream internet, if you like. And then this idea came along to see if we could bring a solution to the challenge of mobile connectivity in emerging developing markets where the affordability of data is much more challenging than you typically find in developed markets like the US, Europe, Australia, wherever. And it turns out now the access problem is much less than it used to be. In other words, mobile networks are very prevalent, not quite ubiquitous, but very available for most people. And, a large number of people today have smartphones of one sort or another to use to access the internet from their mobile device. The biggest challenge remaining is the affordability of data. So there's a whole world online available to everybody, but you need to have mobile data on your device to be able to use the internet for whatever reason. And the cost of data and its affordability is still a challenge for millions and millions or billions of people. So we saw an opportunity to develop a solution or develop technology to use what mobile networks call mobile reverse bill data. So it's really analogous to toll-free data. So businesses and enterprises of all kinds now have the choice to provide a digital online service and pay for the data themselves instead of expecting an individual, whoever they may be, to have data or be able to afford data to access that digital service. So really, toll-free data is the closest, simplest way to describe it. Toll-free calling has been around for many decades now. Now you can do the same with data. And we're in the business of enabling enterprises of any kind to use reverse bill solutions to make their digital services data free.
That's extraordinary. It sounds absolutely fascinating. And you've basically taken the idea of data and you've turned it upside down, literally upside down, in terms of trying to understand who's using what, etc., etc. And extraordinary, Gour, when you look at the world that we're living in today, that we're still having this conversation about the cost of data. But the reality is, the networks are getting faster. We're using our phones a lot more. You've got 5G connectivity speeds right now. So exponentially, the growth of usage of data on our mobile devices has grown tremendously over the last 5 years in particular. Now, how does it actually work? You mentioned this is like almost toll-free data. I'm trying to get my head around it. How does it actually work?
So typically, Aki, if a business or enterprise, it doesn't have to be for profit, it could be any kind of enterprise. Historically, the modus operandi has been if you need your team members, your employees, your community of users to access your digital service, and you are happy to pay the data cost for that. In the past, you would have to provide phones and SIM cards or send airtime top-ups to your team members, employees, so that they have data on their phones to access your services to do their job. The problem
Right.
with that is you can't be assured that the data you provide gets used for the purpose intended. So if I need employees to use apps on their phone for work, and that could be communication, like WhatsApp, Gmail, it could be Teams and Zoom, it could be Maps, it could be, any application on their phone they need to perform their work. In the past, I would send them data or give them data in some manner and hope they use it for work. But of course, people are people and they might use some of that data for social media, YouTube, who knows what. So you always had this conundrum or this problem that you provide a gig of data and you hope some of it gets used for the work purpose. But of course, some of it or a large amount of it sometimes may be used for other things. So it's inefficient, it's administratively expensive because you've got to send data and keep track of things. Your employees run out of data, they say, I've run out of data and you've got to send more, etc. What we're bringing to market is a solution where business can make the apps they need their employees to use data free. And they pay the data bill, but only for the work you need employees to do. So you don't send them data, you make your service data free, which means they don't need data because you're paying the cost of it. And they can use whatever it is they need to use without even having to have airtime data balance on their SIM. Because it's data free, it will always work. And now an employer can be precise in terms of only paying the data cost for the things they need their employees or team members to do, and no more, no less. And with the complete freedom that they can always access it no matter what, even when they don't have airtime data. It's actually a really simple thing. It's a simple thing in how it works, but it's a kind of new concept. And we find employers struggle with understanding how that works because it's never been something you can do before. But actually, it's really simple. It's like toll-free calling. You provide a phone number that anyone can use anytime and you're paying the costs and you never think about it. Well, now you can do the same today.
That is amazing. So let me give you a typical scenario. Let's say I'm a user. I've got my own phone. I've got an account with, say, Vodacom or MTN, whoever it might be, right?
Yep.
The work apps that are used on my company, let's say Gmail and Teams and that sort of thing, those will be billed, and I don't have to worry about the data. That goes to data free, and that's toll free, as you say, toll free data. But if I search Facebook or watch something on YouTube, that cost of that data will come out of my bundle that I have with my network. Is that a good example?
So basically, our business customer gets an online dashboard to manage this, and they
Okay.
set up workspaces and they assign employees into a relevant workspace. For that workspace, they decide which apps on phones should be working data-free or toll-free. The employee then goes to the App Store, gets the Datafree Connect app, just like you would get Slack or Teams or Zoom. They install the app. It's a very small, 5 meg app. They log in with their phone number. They get an SMS OTP to validate their number. And once they're in, it then magically makes the apps that the employer has designated for that workspace to start working data-free or toll-free. So I
What
can
a
come to work
brilliant
with
solution.
my own phone, my own SIM card. I don't have to change or have two phones. I get the Datafree Connect app, log in, just like you would think of the Teams or Slack model. And once I've done that, the apps the employer needs me to use, that could be Gmail, Teams, WhatsApp, Maps, or an employer app, now start working data-free. And it's as simple as that. It's magic.
It's a
And
brilliant
if,
solution. I mean, it's amazing, Gour. I mean,
yeah,
I think that I love the simplicity of it, and it's very straightforward. And it's just a great way of managing data. What I want to ask you is, have you seen more interest in a particular industry for this solution? I mean, who's using your solution?
so it's we launched the product 2 or 3 months ago, so it's quite new, and there's been a lot of interest from most of the companies are working in the sort of gig workspace. So that's ride sharing. Think of drivers of popular ride sharing, ride hailing platforms, the home delivery platforms for groceries. I mean, all the names: 6060, Mr. D, Woolworths Dash. So that's one application area, and there's very strong and rapid take up from some of the large players in that sector to use this. So their drivers, their delivery guys never have to worry about data. They don't have to give them phones and SIM cards and top-ups. There's been interest from other employers with mobile workforces, car rental companies, with people delivering, picking up cars, taking photos, and so on. There's interest in the security industry because obviously they have a lot of staff in the field manning security posts or transit delivery and so on. I mean, the applications are endless. I can't name names at this stage, but I can assure you anyone you can think of is currently looking at this solution as a very neat, crisp, precise way to solve this problem of employees needing data to do their jobs.
No, I think I love the solution. I love it.
Yeah.
And you know what the brilliant thing is? Sorry to interrupt you, Gour. The thing is that if you have the solution installed, let's say security or whoever, right? You can never have the excuse of I've run out of data, because there's
Exactly.
data always availability to use for a WhatsApp call or an emergency or whatever you want to use it for, right?
Exactly. So, ultimately it saves the business money because it's now you're only funding the data you actually need people to use and no more. It means improved customer service because now your field staff always have a data, if you like, to be able to complete their work or call customers or call back to the employer with updates and so on. So, the benefits are multifaceted. It's saving money, it's precision, it's improved customer service. And at the end of the day, happier employees, because I don't have to be carrying two phones around. The world we live in today, when I go to work, I want to keep my number because my number is my personal number. I've got a SIM card. It works in my area. I've got friends and relationships and social and all the rest of it. I don't want to have to change the SIM card to another number. I don't want to have to run, when I run out of data, I've got to communicate with my employer to say, send me more data. It just saves everybody hassle, time, money, and ultimately delivers on the bottom line and customer service, which is always, primary importance for anybody.
So as you're talking, I'm thinking of so many different other case uses for this.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've applied your mind to it as well. What are some of the other potential use cases for this particular solution? And they're just flooding into my mind, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this.
Well, it could be as simple as somebody with domestic staff that you need to communicate with. I mean, that's the small end of the scale, but how many people have felt frustrated because you can't communicate with your domestic help or your small team of employees doing whatever your small business is, all the way up to the largest businesses you can think of that inevitably have people working remotely, whether that's because they can work from home or their job is actually out in the field. I mean, the use cases are endless. So you can pretty much take any industry. It could even extend to NGOs or impact organizations with field staff going out and meeting communities or delivering, service or value or information, whatever it is. I mean, really, there is no limit. So it's a bit limiting to say, well, it works in these industry sectors, but not others, because life today, all of us, is to a significant degree lived on our phones and mobile connectivity, any number of reasons. And this product has value in all those scenarios. So I don't think there's any limit, to be honest.
That's amazing. And Gour, just a quick one. What kind of size organization, or what's the minimum amount of users that this product is aimed at? Is it more enterprise? But by the sounds of it, if you're using it for staff, and you have, say, 10 members of staff, can I, as an individual, use it for that case, for just 10 users, for example?
Easily. I mean, ultimately you could use it for one person. It could even be your teenage kids, if you think about it.
Oh, wow.
How many parents here are constantly having to pay for their teenage kids' phones or top-ups or whatever? I mean, you always want to be able to communicate with your child, your teenage child. I mean, that's one end of the scale, let alone the business application. So we're one step short now of making the product completely online self-serve. So, within our roadmap is the option for anybody to come and sign up online, and use the product without ever talking to us. So that's we're not quite there yet, but that's coming down the track. Yeah, as easy as that.
That's brilliant. So just to wrap up, so let's say I've got your solution. I've got 10 people that I've got the Datafree app on, and I'm managing their mobile phones. At the end of the month, you will send me an invoice to say, this is how much data you've used on the toll-free data, and I pay Datafree Group. You bill me and I pay you, right? Is that as simple as that?
Exactly. We might even, at the small end of the scale, you can prepay, an amount of data that is being used by your team, community of users. And very importantly, Aki, you've raised a good point that we have online reporting, so you're constantly aware of how much data is being used, by who, by person or by phone number. So there's no bill shock at the end of the month when you get the bill and say, what was that all about? You are constantly aware of how much data is being used, by who, for what. You can turn it on and off. There is, it's live, if you like. So there's no pray and hope at the end of the month the bill's not too much. You're constantly aware of how much is being used, able to control and manage that as you go, so there's no surprise. And this is very important. A lot of these traditional solutions where you provide SIM cards or top-ups or whatever, you don't really know how much they're using, on an ongoing basis. It's very hit and miss, and of course there's the problem that people may be using the data you provide for all kinds of other things. In this scenario, the data is only used for what you need people to use. You're constantly aware of how much is being used by who. You can manage it, turn it on and off, add people, take people out, add apps, remove apps. I mean, it's just, when you think about it in those terms, it is revolutionary compared to what people have gotten used to doing over the last 20 years. This changes the game.
Completely. And sorry, I keep saying a final question, but I'm so intrigued by your product. What about multinationals who've got staff traveling globally and international roaming and that sort of thing? I think it does get complicated when you travel outside the borders of South Africa.
Yes, we're not, we currently primarily operate in South Africa. We are, as it happened, looking at going into other markets initially in the Africa region, but the value we bring has value in any market. And you typically think of emerging developing markets where affordability of data is a challenge, but we've learned in the past year that there's value in this concept in developed markets. So, we have a customer, we developed the technology originally in Australia, and then I moved here 5 years ago. We've got a very large top 20 market cap company in Australia wanting to use it for their 200,000 employees. Sure. And the value proposition there is not so much that people can't afford data, there's an expectation that employees will come to work with their own phones. They all have to use an app every day as part of being employed by this large organization. And the organization just wants to be able to say to its employees, don't worry, there's no data cost. We're not taking from your plan, whatever you may have. And that's partly, in some cases, maybe an economic consideration, but it's also psychological. Why should I go to work and use my plan, my data to do my job?
Correct.
And
Correct.
that resonates everywhere. And, you know, we've realized that there's opportunity for this concept in markets like America, which we never started out focusing on, but it's become apparent this basic value proposition is applicable in every country. It's not just limited to emerging developed markets, but this is where we're starting, and we're on the verge of taking this product or solution into other markets. And we are absolutely have on our radar screen the developed markets as well as emerging developing markets. So, you know, there's global application for this, and we're pioneering it in South Africa. And I hope if we're successful that South Africa will become the use case or benchmark that others look at around the world and say, geez, what a clever idea. And it all started here. And we're very proud.
Absolutely. Well, Gour Lentell, CEO and co-founder of the Datafree Group, what an incredible, incredible product. I look forward to watching the success grow. I just know that it's going to be incredibly successful because it's just makes so much sense in the world that we're living in today. Thank you very much for joining us on What's Next and sharing your story with us.
Really appreciate it, Aki, and look forward to future conversations as we develop this further. So thanks.
Thank you.